would like to welcome everyone to this session this afternoon. The session is entitled Ghana, Nigeria, and Democratic Republic of the Congo. But unfortunately, we only have, fortunately, we have our two representatives from Nigeria and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, but the panelist from Ghana will, I am told, join the conference tomorrow. So that means that our other panelists have more time, and we will give that to them. Let me introduce myself. I am Leslie Hadfield, a professor of history here at BYU, and I teach African history, which I find very fascinating, and I'm very happy to be here and involved and to meet the delegates from around the world, especially from Africa. So we're honored that they came to present to us here as well. So what we will do is I will turn the time over to Professor Bidmos first, and then we will hear from the Chief of Staff of the Ministry of Justice from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Mr. Guillaume. And I will introduce them first before I hand the time to them, and they will each make a presentation of about 20 minutes, and I will tell them when I will be sitting in front here so they can see me help them keep track of the time. And then we will open up the session for questions and have a great dialogue, I am sure. I hope that all of us will remember that there is translation going on, and so if you can speak slowly and also give some time between when we switch between languages, that will help the translator also switch between languages and keep up with the rest of us here in the room. And also, if you, I would like to direct your attention to the board here. And there are the languages there. Is there any language that we don't have on the board that someone needs the channel for? Is there anyone? I think we're okay. Okay. So let me present or introduce our presenters, and then I will give the time to them. First, we will hear from Professor Bidmos, who you can see his presentation on the PowerPoint here. He is a professor from the University of Lagos, and he has a lot of credentials. He has earned his degrees in Arabic and Islamic studies, and has also studied and done many things in education, as well as interreligious dialogue. So he's very well experienced in that, understanding how religion works in society in various ways. And he's also a chief imam, so we're very excited to have him here. After Professor Bidmos speaks, we'll hear from Mr. Guillaume, who, as I said before, is the Chief of Staff of the Ministry of Justice from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And he has been a lawyer since 2002 and has had a lot of experience in various courts, both in his own country. He has been in the Kinshasa courts and also the International Criminal Court. And you can also learn more about him and Professor Bidmos in the short biographical information we have in the program. So with that, I will turn the time over to our presenters, and we will be happy to hear from them. Thank you.
Can I stay here? Okay. Thank you very much. I think, as a matter of protocol, I would like to place on record my appreciation of your kind gesture to get me involved in this great occasion to address a gathering as august as yours. And thank you very much. As you can see, my presentation, Church-Mosque Joint Project, is synergy for coping social vices in Nigeria. Of course, the presentation is informed or is born out of my experience, the experience I've gathered over a period of more than 3 decades from classroom teaching, because I teach Islamic education and interreligious dialogue in the university since 1980 to date, And secondly, the experience I've gathered from interreligious dialogue. By the way, Nigeria at a glance. Okay? That's the population, that's the capital, that is land, our land, that is our currency, Naira. Okay? That is some information about the country we want to talk about. Then, the situation that I've been teaching in the classroom, and I've been participating in interreligious dialogue in Nigeria and abroad since 1973. I was a very young secondary school teacher at Ansarudin Grammar School, Surulere. And each time Ansarudin Society was invited to interreligious dialogue, they would ask me to go and represent the society. And that started in 1973, which means since 1973 to date, I have been involved in interreligious dialogue. But I have gathered one experience from the classroom teaching and from participating in interreligious dialogue meetings. What is the experience? I have discovered that Muslims and Christians, whenever they met at interreligious dialogue, that was a tradition. What's the tradition? The tradition is that Muslims will come with a list of things that Christians do that are not acceptable to them. The Christian will come with a catalog of complaints against Muslims. That became what? Accusation and counter-accusation. At the end of the session, 2, 3, 4 days, there will be a resolution. We are worshiping the same God. We should not be fighting. We must be brothers keepers and so on. That resolution never was there a mechanism to implement it. It would remain a shelf material. In that case, interreligious dialogue has not worked. And if they continue this way, it will never work. But what I have now discovered from my classroom teaching is that in my class, Muslims and Christians, my subject is compulsory for them. And many of them are imams, either serving imams or imam in making. So, and the pastors. One question I ask them every year is this: what impact has this course made on you? How the Christian will say, I've never touched Quran in my life. I'm reading it for the first time. I never knew that Muslims are pleasant. I never knew they are friends. So the attitude changed. The Muslims will express the same sentiment. As a result, I have discovered in my class over the period of 35 years that if you remove the misinformation between Muslims and Christians, they can work together. Instead of this, what we have now in terms of relationship that's characterized by suspicion, hatred, and so on. If you let them understand each other, certainly they can work together. So I now thought that, okay, what we are going to do is to change the method of interreligious dialogue. Let us change it from coming every year, every time, to come and accuse each other, accusation and counter-accusation. We change it to what? We change it to what I called Church Mosque Joint Project, a synergy for coping social vices in Nigeria. In other words, the church and the mosque can jointly have a project. Instead of coming to interreligious dialogue meeting and accuse each other, you now stop accusing each other. You decide on a project that both of you will build together. What project are we talking about? That is the issue. The project we are talking about is that Nigeria attained independence in 1960. To date, Nigeria remains undeveloped. Why? Because of only one problem. What's the problem? Corruption. That's what they call it. All the money we needed to build the country are taken out of the country by the political leaders. What is corruption? Corruption is a fraud. Corruption is an evil. Corruption is a bad habit. Corruption is a function of the heart. Now, the Muslims and Christians can now meet and say, okay, if what has been delaying the building Nigeria, if what has been delaying it is corruption, So the church and the mosque together have a solution to the problem of corruption. What is the solution they have? The solution they have is that both of them can come together to say that if corruption is a function of the heart, then we can use religion to cure that ill. When we come to interreligious dialogue, what we are going to discuss is how do we use religion to cure the ill of corruption so that people will have now time and resources to build the nation. Okay. Then I came to the conclusion that conducting these activities presuppose making the environment ready and conducive, because such activities cannot take place on the mountains, trees, and in the rivers. What activities I'm talking about? God says in the Quran that I created you. And when I created you, I settled you on the earth. And I asked the question, what is settlement? Settlement is eating, drinking, marrying, raising family, dressing, traveling around. All these activities, you cannot conduct them on the trees, on the mountains, on the rivers. You conduct them where? In a place that is developed. Therefore, developing your place is a religious activity. It's a worship of God to develop the place. Because God has taken for granted that since I've told you that I created you and I settle you meaning that you will use your brain to know that settlement is not possible except in a developed place. So you develop your place. When you are developing your place, what are you doing? You are worshiping God. Muslims and Christians, therefore, should see development of their place as a worship. But the only thing that has been delaying the development is what? It's corruption. Then how do we solve the problem of corruption? To solve the problem of corruption, I now came up with what I call Don't project, common project. What is a common project? A common project is when Muslims and Christians will say, okay, what we can do to help Nigeria to solve the problem of corruption is to cleanse the heart. Because corruption is a function of the heart. Why? Our Prophet of Islam told us, Muhammad, he said, there is in the body a piece of meat. If that piece of meat is rotten, the whole body will be rotten. If that piece of meat is clean, the whole body will be clean. In that case, corruption is a dirty habit coming from dirty thought. The dirty thought will be produced by what? Dirty heart. And I refer you to the Bible. The Bible says in the book of Amos, remember to keep your heart diligent, because all matters of life issue out from where? From your heart. And the Quran says the same thing, that keep your heart clean. Therefore, if Christians and Muslims in Nigeria can help Nigerians keep their heart clean, corruption will collapse. Because it's only a dirty heart we think of corruption. Then get the heart clean. So the question now is, if they take now cleansing the heart a joint project, how are they going to do it? I say, for example, the rationale behind the project derives from the fact that social strife of any description is a function of the heart, which is the source of consumption of ideas. For example, any action of man, positive such as eating, drinking, traveling, trading, awarding scholarship, or negative such as kidnapping, stealing, suicide, etc., is preceded by thinking. You first of all think about it, then you do it. Then, if your heart is clean, what you are going to think about is going to be a clean thought. A clean thought will become a clean action, and that is development of the nation. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, how are they going to do it? I'm suggesting that the way to do it is to use what I call shared values. Shared values is when, well, I've passed the problem statement. The problem statement is just that Nigeria cannot develop because of corruption. That is the problem, the statement of the problem. Then how do you help them solve the problem of corruption? Is by cleansing the heart. Then we now come to the theoretical framework. Theoretical framework is still very simple. If there is something in place and it cannot coexist with something else, it means that if A is present, you don't expect B, because A and B cannot work together. In the same thing, if your heart is clean, okay, clean heart and corruption cannot coexist. That is the theoretical framework that I'm using in this study. In that case, we have to clean the heart. To clean the heart, what are you going to use? We are going to use what? Shared values. What is shared values? This is the core of my presentation, ladies and gentlemen. In the Bible, in the Quran, we have what we call common teachings and tenets between Muslims and Christians. I'll give you an example. I told my students in the class that, look, the Christians and Muslims have no choice but to work together using the Quran and the Bible to get information. I gave them an example of Mary. When Mary was pregnant, he went to the wilderness. When she got to the wilderness, the pain of child delivery gripped her. She cried, "Oh my Lord, how I wish I died before now, and I did not witness this ordeal." A voice came to her, "Don't cry. The tree where you are seated, shake the tree. A date will drop. Pick the date and eat, and that will give you easy delivery." She complied. She shook the tree. The date dropped. She picked and ate, and she delivered the baby. She carried the baby home, and people asked her, "Mary, how did you come with the baby? You are not married." She pointed to the baby. They said, "How can we talk to a day old? You are the one to talk." She pointed. Then the baby talked and said, "I am so, so, and so." In that case, 3 lessons. The first lesson was that God did not teach Mary to read something, but God taught her to do what? To perform exercise. Any lady in the world before delivery will be asking the hospital to perform some exercise. The second thing, Mary was asked to eat a date. Eating the date is what? Medication. Number 3, Jesus talked as a day old. That was the first miracle he performed, not turning water to wine, according to the belief of some people. In that case, that kind of information that Muslims and Christians will get from the Holy Book that you cannot get elsewhere, you need those information to cleanse the heart. Now, coming to the shared values, the first of all commandment is, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, there is one God, and there is none other but him." That is in the Bible. What does the Quran say? Say he is Allah, one, and so on. So when we look at all the shared values, ladies and gentlemen, it means that Bible and the Quran are saying the same thing. If they are saying the same thing, then those things they are saying, Muslims and Christians can use them as an instrument of what? Cleansing the heart. Particularly, let me go back to this one. Look at the heart cleansing. Keep thy heart diligent. And the Quran says the same thing. And we are saying that, okay, to keep the heart clean is the way to solve the problem of corruption, which has been delaying the nation building. Then, how do you implement it? This is the way to implement the project. The Muslims and Christians will have to go to the Bible. The shared values I listed here, they are not conclusive. It's just a tip of the iceberg. Let them do more research about shared values, common teachings. Let them do a research about different types of corruption that we have. Let them now decide to say, okay, how are we going to use the common project to solve the problem of corruption? The way to do it is very simple. You now make the teaching of religion compulsory, especially the aspect of it that has to do with cleansing the heart. Cleansing the heart is an activity. It's not a matter of theory. There are certain things you have to do on a daily basis as a Christian and Muslim. And when you do them, the heart will become clean. And when the heart is clean, then you have become somebody who is ready for positive actions, not negative. Corruption is negative, fraud is negative, murder is negative. So that is the project implementation. Meanwhile, the attainment of the set objectives is necessarily anchored on the determination of the Muslims and Christians. In other words, is this project, is it effective? Does it have efficacy? Can it work? Well, if Muslims and Christians believe that it can work, it will work. It will work. It's a matter of determination. They have to abandon the old system of acquisition and counter-acquisition and be ready to give this project a chance. When they are ready to give it a chance and decide on how to implement it, it will work. Why do I say it will work? I told you earlier on that I teach this course every year. And at the end of every year, a common question I ask my students every year is that, what impact has this course made on you? And I believe if this course can make that positive impact on my students, it can make it on anybody. That is one. Secondly, if this project can work in Nigeria to kill corruption and get Nigerians ready to build the nation, it can work globally. The problem that is facing Nigeria is corruption. The problem that is facing the whole world is what? Terrorism. In that case, they can use it at global level. I have participated in inter-religious dialogue in Britain, in US, in Saudi Arabia. So all over the world, people are meeting to do inter-religious dialogue. Let them now change the method of doing inter-religious dialogue to the question of this joint project to have what? A synergy. When they have such a synergy and they stop acquisition and counter-acquisition, they can solve a very big problem. Thank you very much.
Okay, I want to thank Professor Bidmos very much for his presentation. And we will now make the transition to hear from Mr. Guillaume. So he can go to the front. And for those of us who need the translation, he will be speaking in French. And so for those of us who need the English translation, you can turn to channel 4 for this room.
Ça marche?
There. Okay? Testing. Sounds good. Sorry, we were just waiting for some translators too.
Je serai pas trop long.
I won't be very long. I want to thank those who organized this symposium for their interest in my country. And for that, I'd like to correct something that I'm not the Attorney General. I'm an advisor to the Attorney General. I do not have that power. I would like to thank Mr. Donnelly, who has actively, helped to bring me over here, along with the team back home, Mr. Tikabungi and Olivier Chimanga. I do not have a specific subject. I took the general topic that I tried to dissect to understand the question before us. Because in reality, the question that we have here is to know whether there is independency either between law and religion. In my country, the Congo is a secular state. There is no state religion. But to address this question, I have divided my presentation in three parts. The first part, I will address the constitutional and legal guarantees in my country and in how it's dedicated to freedom of worship. And secondly, I will talk about, will explore public order in regards to individual freedoms, in regards to religion. And thirdly, we'll take a look at social consequences of the first two elements in regards to social life, because both are in synergy. In regards to legislation, I would like to tell you that my country, the Congo, brings much constitutional and legislative guarantees in regards to the issue of religion, because in the fundamental law, Articles 16 and 22 of the Constitution of my country say that clearly, and I'm going to cite the Article 16, that the human person is sacred. The state is required to respect that this person, and all people has the right to life and to physical integrity and free development of their personality in respect within the law and in the public order and for respect of morals. And no one can be held as a slave. No one can be submitted to cruel treatment and degrading treatments. No one should be forced to labor. So when you take Article 22 of the Constitution, it says this: all person has the right to is free to think and of the liberty of conscience and of religion, and to manifest their religion and convictions alone, as long as in group or in public or in private, by worship, by teaching, by practice and fulfillment of rights, and the way he lives his religion for as long as he respects the law and the other people's rights. This means that the Congolese state guarantees freedom of religion. And the proof is that even today, we can see that we have many churches. And there are a few main religions, the Catholic Church, Kimbankist Church, Muslim Church, and there are several new groups that we call churches that are said to be revival churches that express in their prayers with much warmth. In fact, outside even those groups, we have the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which is not even within that group. And so the Constitution guarantees that fundamental right to all as Congolese citizens, and on that point, there's no issue. In regards to the public order, it should be noted that public order is in essence respecting law and practices that are acceptable in society. This is a very simple definition. But in my country, churches are considered as to be associations. They are seen as associations with non-profit organizations. And so, to being categorized as such, there are rules as to how they're supposed to function. These non-profit organizations are part of ISBELs, or non-profit organizations. So to function, they need to have specific statutes. And so they have a charter, a constitutional charter, in which they define the objectives by which they will execute the doctrine of their church. And so we register you once you have submitted this charter, and then you can move forward. And so that charter, which is a law for you, should not be or should not go against the law in accordance with the Constitution and the law that rules over the non-profit associations. So the law in regards to non-profit organizations as BELs, as well as the Constitution, will exercise their power as a state over your charter. So you cannot preach anything that preach hatred or death. And there is no, for example, in our doctrine, you cannot prone homosexuality, because our Constitution states that the marriage is between a man and a woman. And so if you come as a church to promote homosexuality, then you'll be sanctioned, because homosexuality, as stated in our country, cannot pass as order in our country. And so I must restate that religion is a source of law, and the moral laws fit within the judicial laws. And so if this moral rules come in and go against the rules, the rule of law, then the state will come in and sanction the churches. In regards to social stability, understand with me that 2 points that precede a gathering and interaction between the 3 elements here, which is social stability. When a religious person preaches the good news, and Professor Bidmos just talked about corruption, and from a church point of view is immoral, and from a criminal point of view it's breaking the law. We can't understand that within a church we can encourage corruption, and that state and the state let it happen. So the church must first preach good news and remind people to not commit adultery, to not commit fornication, or to not commit corruption. And when you see that the whole criminal law aligns with those moral laws. And so both religion and law come together to bring moral into people behavior. And in moralizing, bring moral into people behavior, it brings stability in society. We must admit that the state can't allow that those maintain a monopoly to oppress people. And the state is not there to come in and analyze and check every sermon and everything that is being done within the churches. It's just a matter of presenting a clean charter that states the objective of the church, and the state will accept that. And so, for that reason, in my country, we encourage churches to come in. And most recently, the Attorney General has encouraged General State for Justice here to invite so many people to participate with. Many religious leaders have been invited to negotiate in study groups to discuss what needs to happen next. So they have a voice. They participate at the Senate, at the General Assembly, and they're invited to participate as members of civic associations. So that's why this has been created to avoid that certain laws are created to infringe upon religious freedom, and so they participate in the process. All that is to help maintain social stability. And all that is to help us think together, to think about what's to be done, what's to be taken, and what's to be left out. Thank you.
Okay. We'll just give Mr. Guillaume some time to be ready. Okay, I want to thank both of our presenters for keeping within the time. That's wonderful. It really helps us. I think now we have plenty of time to discuss and have questions from the audience, and I found it very interesting to see the different perspectives, one from one particular project on how to create the interreligious dialogue on the ground, a very specific example for us on how to have religions work together and still have an impact on the law if you're looking at a particular problem, to solve a particular problem like corruption. And then we have a very good example of how, or an explanation of how religion fits within the laws in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And that was a great illustration for us to know how that works together. So, excuse me. I would like to open this up for questions. I have questions, but I'll open it up for anyone else who has questions first, and then maybe I will jump in if there's time, but I want to let others. Now, one thing that we need to remember is, again, to allow some time for the translation to work. So if you are asking your question, please state your name, where you are from, and speak in the language you are most comfortable speaking in, and then we will have the translation. We do have a microphone that we need you to use if you have a question, and we are video recording this, so if you have a question, we invite you to come down to the front, and we will give you the microphone to ask your question. Any questions so far? Okay. We'd like to see your face, so if you'll just come. Then, yeah, okay? I think that should be okay.
So my question is for Guillaume and relates to the concept of churches operating in the DR Congo where law, written law and practice are not the same in many cases in our experience. And for example, if you're true to your faith, you typically are not corrupt yourself. And so when you are pursuing an objective, you sometimes then go through the front door, you want to do everything honestly, but you hit so many barriers because of corruption, which is from Professor Bidmos' comments. But my question then is, in French they say, est-ce qu'il vaut la peine? Is it worth the effort to use a legal route? So for example, in the DR Congo, for example, one is trying to get a contract to digitize electronically the archives of the country with millions and millions of records that are deteriorating. But the church who offers this free cannot pursue it because of corruption on the way. Nobody will advance this because they want to be paid. And so the church's stance is that we will not pay a bribe. So my question is, comment on that. And secondly, is it really worth the effort to go down a legal route to try to overcome that problem? Thank you.
Okay, we will let Mr. Guillaume answer that question, and then we will take other questions.
Merci. Bien. La question de la corruption, c'est...
The question of corruption is like gangrene in the whole world. And it's true that we don't want to admit that someone could come help the state freely, will find obstacles and would have to pay bribes. It's inadmissible.
Je ne peux pas affirmer qu'effectivement...
I cannot affirm that this corruption is authorized. But the secretary have said that this is an evil that should be suppressed. And in May, last May, they will be applied. Be assured that this behavior will be sanctioned and it won't say non-punished.
Conseiller spécial en matière de...
A special advisor in a matter of corruption is working on this. Be assured.
Okay, thank you. We will now take another question, if there is one. Oh, okay. Was there another hand here? Maybe we can take 2 or 3 questions at a time, and then, okay. So we'll go with Ms. Hackett.
My name is Rosalind Hackett from the University of Tennessee. I'd like to ask Professor Bidmos to perhaps compare his initiative in the light of the work known internationally done by the imam and the pastor as another interreligious effort to address misunderstandings and secondly, how do you measure, or will you measure the success of your project? I mean, how can you evaluate its long-term value?
I can see it. Okay, thank you. Well, the project is to actually achieve 2 things. The 2 things we want to achieve with it is that, first of all, it will divert attention of the Muslims and Christians from accusation and counter-accusation. That is the first benefit of the project. They are going to change the modem, the methodology of interrogation. They are going to change the methodology now to project. So when they meet now at interreligious dialogue, it is no longer talking. They talk about specific project. That is the first advantage. The second advantage is that the efficacy of this project, either short term or long term, the efficacy is guaranteed. Why? I told you my experience with my students. My students are transformed. They began to see each other in a different light. So my experience with my students shows that this project can work, either on short term or long term, depending on what? On the readiness of the Muslims and Christians to give it a chance. It's very difficult to do because it requires a lot of resources, it requires a lot of pain and planning and so on. It has to be embedded in the school curriculum. Another advantage of this is that it's going to help the law. In Nigeria, a head of state introduced public execution of robbers, armed robbers. In Nigeria today, more than 1,000 armed robbers have been killed. But despite of that killing, that has not reduced the rate of armed robbery in the country. Okay, in other words, if armed robbery continues, despite the fact that the law is there to kill them, then this project now can cleanse the heart, and the people who are committing armed robbery can stop it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so can I see who has a question? If you have a question, just raise your hand. Here, I think we'll take a few questions at a time, and then we'll allow the presenters to respond.
Yes, my name is Abdurrahman Ahmed from Nigeria. Well, partly a question, partly an information. Just talking to the thesis of Professor Bidmos' presentation, I'd like to just add a bit of information that the Nigeria Interreligious Council has entered the phase that Professor Bidmos is talking about years back. In the last 5 years, this what has been done. And we have two products to show for this. Now, the Nigerian Interreligious Council, working in collaboration with the Anti-Corruption Agency in Nigeria, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, has an interfaith advisory council which has produced an interfaith teaching manual against corruption. This was published and publicly presented about a year ago in Abuja. Now, this is a joint Muslim-Christian project and an initiative. Now, besides this, there is also a plan to do a joint television program that will be anchored by someone, and there will always be two guests, a Muslim and a Christian. And when that commences, the first set of guests will be the Sultan of Sokoto, who is the President General of the Nigerian Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs, and the current President, Pastor Ayo Orishajefo. So the second project relates to, a policy, an interfaith policy on the control of HIV and AIDS. In fact, two monumental policy documents have been produced, an Islamic policy on HIV AIDS and a Christian policy on HIV and AIDS. The third project that the interfaith community have worked on is the malaria project, which is funded by the Global Fund. We call it NIFA, Nigeria Interfaith Action Against Malaria. This is ongoing, and it's a project that's ongoing in Nigeria. Now, the problem with all of this, even if we have passed the stage of accusations and counter-accusations, is that the instruments, to measure the impact of these efforts are still in the rudimental stage of development. And it's really very, very difficult, to measure the impact of projects like this. We can only hope that, it will have a long-term effect. This is information. My question is, now this is anchored on the willingness of the Muslims and Christians to cooperate and work together. But we're talking of a vast community, so many denominations, so many, officially this is happening, but then it has not significantly mitigated tension and mutual suspicion. Now, what further action could we take as a faith community, an interfaith forum, to get buy-in from members of the public? The problem is not with the pastors and the imams, the elites, but the problem really is that at interfaith fora, we meet and fellowship, and when people go back to their churches and mosques, they preach something else. Oh, no, don't mind them. That's for the TV, that's for the camera. How can we stem this tide? I don't want to call it hypocrisy, but that is what it seems to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. My comment on your comment is that the project you said you are having is miles apart from this presentation. You are still talking about
advising people, talking to people on radio and television and so on, is still advice. That will not work. What is going to work is something pragmatic, something to attract. See what happened last week. The Pope was talking in American House of Assembly. What happened to the speaker? Throughout the period the Pope was talking, the Speaker of the House was shedding tears. At the end of the meeting with the Pope, what did he do? He resigned. That is addressing the conscience. This project is to address the conscience of people. If you Muslims and Christians are ready to try it. So the project you are saying you are doing is different from this. This one is going to address the heart, the conscience. It is heart cleansing. It is a real rigorous activity. Now, your question is that how are we going to measure the effectiveness of it? I told you in my presentation, my students have not gone through any rigorous heart cleansing, but already they show some element of transformation from the little exercises we are doing in the class. You are saying that the problem is not with the pastors and imams, but with general people. No, it's with pastors and imams, because it is the pastors and imams that we implement the project on the general public. So it is the problem of imams and pastors, not of general public. Because all the share values I put here, I told you, is the tip of the iceberg. You still have to do more research in Hadith, in the Bible, in the Quran, to identify more teachings that are common to the both groups and find a way of using it to cleanse the heart. How do we measure it? Well, it's a long-term project. How to measure it is if the rate of corruption and crime can crash. In other words, if people begin to behave differently, that is how to measure it. But it takes some time.
Okay, we have just a few minutes, so time for one more comment, and then we need to move on in case other people need to go to the other activities that start at 5. So just one more is it a comment or a question?
It's a comment and a question. Quickly, sometimes ago, I read a book where a man was sick and 2 different doctors attended to him, and they had 2 diagnoses. And in their delay, the man went into a coma. So they had to operate anyway. And under the operating table, they discovered that both diagnoses were correct. Now, I think my question going forward, and I'm happy to be part of this, is how can we marry both? The problem is at the top, the problem is below. And I know we have an example. The Sheikh and I have had our congregation work together on common community projects. And so, if they know he loves us now in his organization, and my people, not only me, visit the mosque at any time they want to, and they have been to our churches. And if that can be married, that will go a long way to resolve a lot of issues. The question is, going forward, and that perhaps we will take away from this place, is how can we make that practical? Because whatever you say, the question is, what you do speaks so loud that I cannot hear what you are saying. In other words, example is the only thing. When the leaders and the led work cooperative together on projects, things change. And an imam that has been in the midst of Muslims, working with his congregation and the other congregation, cannot go back on Sunday and say, don't believe these people. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'm going to leave that for future conversations because we're past time, but I think we've learned about and raised a number of very good issues to continue to talk about. the way that these things need to happen on an individual level in the heart, and also how that extends to leaders and the government. How do we get these different levels to reach each other? And also the role of morality and its link to religion, and how that is also so important to the law and the government. So thank you everyone for coming to this session, and we will continue the conversations, I'm sure, and especially in other sessions. Thank you.